There are three things you never expect to find in your dishwasher: a steak knife pointing up, a condom wrapper, and your wife's wedding ring. But there it was, tangled between a cheese grater and a glass measuring cup, smeared faintly with lipstick, like a half-assed symbol of guilt trying to be washed clean. I didn't scream, didn't flinch, didn't even stop the cycle. I simply let the water boil it a little longer while I leaned on the counter, staring at the calendar where she'd scribbled "Girls' Night, Wine and Tarot at Jessica's." That would have been fine, except Jessica had texted me a selfie from Italy an hour ago, posing with a Vespa and a man whose shirt had fewer buttons than moral standards. I'd been home early that evening, which in itself was rare. My meeting got canceled, and I thought it'd be a nice surprise to bring her favorite dumplings from that hole-in-the-wall spot she always claimed was our thing. I even brought wine. Silly, isn't it? How betrayal doesn't announce itself with sirens or a shotgun blast, but instead with the quiet horror of tiny details out of place. Her perfume was too strong, too fresh, like she had reapplied it hastily, desperately, almost. There was a smudge on the mirror in the shape of a handprint, one too large to be hers, unless her hands had recently grown calluses and started smelling like cheap tobacco. The bed was made, tighter than usual, which might have been comforting if I hadn't known she hadn't made a bed in 3 years without complaining like it was a human rights violation. But what really nailed it, what slid under my ribs like an icicle, was the playlist on the Bluetooth speaker still softly playing in the background. It wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. I stood there, wine in one hand, dumplings in the other, like a deranged waiter at the worst dinner party ever conceived. I set the food down, turned off the music, and walked to the laundry room. One of her bras was hanging to dry, lacy, red, and definitely new. She hadn't worn that size since college. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't broken. It was just cold. Like my body was conserving warmth for the war I hadn't declared yet. She'd texted an hour ago saying she'd be late, and my reply had been the usual: "No problem, love you." That was before I saw the ring in the dishwasher, before I noticed the extra coffee mug in the sink still warm. She hated coffee afternoon. Hated it. Said it messed with her sleep. But the lipstick on that cup didn't match hers. Hers was always a muted mauve. This was blood red. When she walked through the door 30 minutes later, coat a little off-kilter, hair slightly windblown in that suspiciously tousled way they try to sell in shampoo commercials, I was sitting at the table sipping the wine. One glass. She didn't notice the dumplings right away, or maybe she pretended not to. Her eyes darted once to the dishwasher, and I caught the flash of recognition, the mental checklist happening behind her eyelids. She smiled, a little too wide. "You're home early. Everything okay?" she said, as though her voice could vacuum up the wreckage before it hit the floor. I nodded, keeping my voice calm, easy. "Yeah, just thought we could have a quiet night. Dumplings. Wine." Her eyes flicked to the dumplings. To the wine. To my empty tone. "That's sweet," she said, stepping further in. I already ate. Jessica made pasta." "In Italy?" I asked, tilting my head just slightly. Her lips parted. And that half-second pause? That breath she took to calculate which lie would land softest? That was the sound of the first fracture forming. I didn't ask where she'd really been. I didn't need to. The evidence was all around us like smoke after a gunshot. I just watched her squirm, watched her eyes search for something to anchor to, anything normal, anything to reset the vibe. But I wasn't giving her that. I offered her a dumpling instead. She took it with shaky fingers and tried to bite, but her appetite had vanished. "You okay?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course," I replied, and I smiled, a real smile, sharp and clean. Everything's finally starting to make sense. And in that moment, I knew two things with absolute clarity. 1, I would never touch this woman again. And 2, she was going to learn exactly what it feels like to trade gold for glitter. It wasn't like she stopped loving me overnight. No, that would have been too easy, too clean. It was slower than that, more surgical, like watching a house fall apart one shingle at a time while someone keeps smiling from the front porch. At first, it was little things. She'd start going for walks in the evenings, longer than usual, and always came back flushed and a bit too breathless, saying the air just felt so freeing lately. Then came the new hobbies: painting, yoga, finding herself, in candlelit studios with names like Inner Flame and Moon Ballads. She started journaling, talking about chakras, reading books with pastel covers about feminine power and reclaiming space. I smiled and supported it all, bought her the expensive oil paints she swore inspired her, even drove across town to find a specific shade of blue she said reminded her of the ocean in her dreams. I told myself this was good, healthy, normal. Love was about growth, right? And if she was growing, I wanted to be there watering the soil. But the garden she was planting didn't include me anymore. I'd reach out to touch her, and she'd flinch like my hand was something cold and foreign. Became scheduled, then infrequent, then something we should talk about. She said her body wasn't the same anymore, that she didn't want to be touched when she was tired, when she was anxious, when she wasn't in that headspace, and somehow, she was never in that headspace again. She started going out without explanation, never at night. That would have been too easy to track. Midday errands turned into 4-hour vanishing acts. I just needed to get some air, she'd say, eyes a little too wide, a little too rehearsed. Her phone was always face down now. Notifications off. When I joked about it, just light teasing, trying to keep things playful, she snapped. Said I was being controlling. That I needed to respect her boundaries. I felt like I just walked into a courtroom without knowing I'd been charged. Everything she used to share, tiny moments, silly texts, pointless photos of her lunch, vanished like they'd been memories from someone else's life. Her Instagram changed too. Suddenly private. I'd catch glimpses of it on her screen. Selfies I'd never seen. Captions that sounded like she was narrating a solo journey through some desert I wasn't invited to. Learning to love myself again, one said. That one hit harder than I admitted. As if I'd been the one preventing her from doing so. I scrolled through my own feed afterward and realized something awful. I wasn't in her last 10 posts. I wasn't even in her world anymore, just orbiting it like some satellite she forgot to decommission. Once, I found a new gym bag in her trunk, brand new, expensive, with a towel that still had the tag on it and a pair of running shoes I'd never seen before. She said she'd signed up for a women's-only kickboxing class, but there were 2 deodorants in the bag. 2. One female, one distinctly male. I said nothing, just nodded like a fool. Trust, I reminded myself. That's what separates love from paranoia. But trust started to feel like insanity wearing a polite suit. Her car started smelling different, less like her usual lavender spray and more like aftershave, musky and too strong, like it had clung to the seats in defiance. Still, I told myself I was overthinking, that the world was just weird right now, that maybe I was the one being distant, the one not adapting fast enough to this version of her that glowed under string lights and came home humming songs I didn't recognize. She started using words that didn't belong to her. Sacred feminine. Emotional labor. Holding space. She talked like a TED Talk and smiled like she was constantly being photographed. I asked her once if she was happy. She said, I'm trying to be. Not we're trying to be. Just I, alone. And I heard it loud and clear, but I kept pretending I didn't. Because the idea of her slipping through my fingers without a fight felt like losing a limb in slow motion. I convinced myself this was a phase. That maybe she was just overwhelmed. That maybe I could fix it. I cooked more, cleaned more, left notes on her mirror the way I used to in the early days. But she read them like ads, polite glances, no heart reaction. One night I heard her laugh, really laugh, at a text she quickly cleared before I could see it. I stood in the doorway for a second longer than I should have. She caught me and her face twisted, not into guilt, but irritation. Do you need something? She asked, flatly, like I was interrupting something sacred. Just checking in, I said. But I wasn't checking in. I was checking out. Not from the marriage. From the illusion that we were still in one. And I think that was the first night I realized something ugly. She hadn't drifted away. She'd left. She just hadn't packed yet. It was a Tuesday, which is probably the cruelest day to die inside, because there's nothing dramatic about it, no significance, no emotional backdrop, just a gray, regular day when you're supposed to be doing laundry and pretending life is fine. She had left her laptop open. That alone was strange. She never left devices unattended anymore. But there it was on the kitchen island, glowing faintly, like it was breathing in the dark. She was in the shower, the steam already fogging up the hallway mirror. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even planning to look. But the screen blinked with a pop-up notification. A calendar invite. Friday 2 p.m., room 412. Bring that black, said again, smiling face with horns. L. That's all it took. 3 lines of digital rot. I stood still, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly louder than everything else. My chest didn't tighten. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Like the world was suddenly submerged underwater, and I could hear my own blood moving. I moved the mouse, not touching the keyboard, not clicking anything, just hovering. The message history was open in the sidebar. She hadn't even minimized it. Maybe she was getting reckless. Or maybe she wanted to be caught. But what I saw wasn't just betrayal. It was character assassination. Their chat was pages long, filled with ugly, mocking laughter at my routines, my quirks, even my body. She had typed things about me that made me feel like I was watching a stranger wear her face. "He still thinks we're reconnecting," one line read. "It's almost sad. He's like a loyal dog who hasn't figured out he's been replaced." I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. Perfectly. I closed the laptop quietly. Not slammed. Not dropped. Just closed, like sealing a tomb. She was still in the shower, singing something soft and tuneless. Her silhouette behind the fogged glass looked almost angelic. How poetic. A woman who once whispered love to me now mouthing someone else's name while I stood outside the steam cloud like a ghost haunting my own home. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just looked around our kitchen, our walls, the little framed photos of vacations where I'd held her hand and thought the world made sense. Now every picture looked like a crime scene photo, still frames from the autopsy of a marriage. I walked upstairs without a sound, every step deliberate, like I was stepping into a different version of myself. I opened the closet, found the bag I hadn't touched since our anniversary trip, and laid it on the bed. I didn't pack. Not yet. Just looked at it. Considered its weight. Its purpose. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I was thinking about clarity. About how the worst part wasn't that she lied. It was that she stopped caring whether or not I noticed. That message didn't shatter me. It sculpted me into something colder, sharper, more awake than I'd felt in months. And the most terrifying part? I didn't feel hurt. I felt ready. She thought she was clever. That was her first mistake. The second was assuming I was still the same man folding towels in the background while she rehearsed her enlightenment monologues. The moment I closed that laptop, I didn't fall apart. I began reconstruction. Quietly. Efficiently. Like a man cleaning up a crime scene he didn't commit but was somehow blamed for. I started with the obvious, our shared calendar. She had no idea I could access it from my office desktop, and that her habit of color-coding events gave me a neat little roadmap of her fabrications. Every time she said therapy, yoga, brunch with Megan, I logged it. Matched it against timestamps, receipts, social media. She wasn't smart enough to hide it all. No one is. I didn't need a private investigator. I just needed pattern recognition. The first crack was a florist charge in Midtown at 9:13 a.m., billed during a time she was supposedly in group healing at her new trauma coach's house. I called the florist. Said I was verifying a client delivery. Turns out she'd picked up the bouquet herself, lilies and roses, on her way to what was apparently not a trauma coaching session but a hotel 20 minutes away, booked under a male name with the initials LC. She'd even used our joint credit card to pay for lunch afterward. Her arrogance was my best ally. I never asked where she went that day. Just smiled when she came home glowing and said she'd had a breakthrough about her inner child. I told her I was proud. She kissed my cheek like I was a kind stranger and went to shower again, humming some indie pop garbage that made my skin crawl. That night, I made her tea, asked about her day, and gently mentioned Megan. "Oh, Megan canceled," she lied. "Something about her niece's recital." I nodded slowly. Took a sip of tea. Hope the kid nailed it. Her blink was just slightly too long. Her mouth twitched. I stored that glitch for later. Next step, location tracking. I didn't need her phone. I didn't need spyware. I just needed her best friend's Instagram. Jessica. The same Jessica who was allegedly part of her weekly wine and healing circles. Jessica who'd been in Rome for the past 2 weeks. Jessica whose stories she forgot were still public. There she was, sunbathing at the Trevi Fountain on a Thursday, while my wife claimed they were doing cacao ceremony in her apartment. That was the day I started referring to my wife as the subject, in my mind clinical, detached, operational. I began cross-referencing photos. Nail polish colors. Jewelry. Backgrounds and blurry mirror selfies she posted only to her close friends list. She forgot she'd once added my cousin, Lex, who didn't like her enough to keep secrets when I asked nicely. I made a burner email and used it to create a fake yoga studio offering free trial classes to women in the area. Send it directly to her inbox with a personalized subject line. Reconnect with yourself, mind, and body. Invitation from Moonbloom Wellness. She opened it within minutes, clicked the link. The tracker I embedded logged her IP. She wasn't at home. She wasn't at work. She was at a coffee shop 3 blocks from that same Midtown hotel. I sent another email a week later, this time from a fake coaching group offering tantric couples retreats. Same result, different location. Another hotel. Every week, I tightened the noose a little more, not around her throat, but around the lies she thought were still floating. I even set a bait trap. I told her my work was sending me out of town for 3 days, had to leave early Thursday morning. I packed a bag, booked a fake flight, left the house, drove to a friend's condo on the other side of the city, and waited. She didn't waste a second. By 11 a.m., the security camera I'd installed inside the garage light, unseen, motion-triggered, feeding directly to my cloud, captured her opening the door for a tall man with broad shoulders and zero hesitation. They didn't kiss right away. No, they laughed first. Comfortable. Familiar. He grabbed her waist like they were in the middle of a routine, and she leaned into it like it was home. That was the moment I stopped calling him the other man in my head. He was just another variable in the equation. A weak one. Sloppy. Predictable. I didn't go back that night. Didn't text her. Didn't ask how her solo meditation weekend was going. I let her bask in it, thinking she'd gotten away clean. The next day, I came home like nothing had happened. Kissed her forehead. Asked if she felt rejuvenated. She said, "I needed the space. Thank you for respecting that." I nodded, smiling inside. Because now I knew everything I needed to know. Her timing. Her patterns. Her language. Even the excuses she defaulted to when she was caught off guard. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was building the finale. Move by move. And she was walking right into it. Blindfolded. Holding a glass of her own poison. It was a gallery opening. Her favorite artist, some abstract expressionist fraud who smeared paint like a toddler and charged $5,000 a canvas. I bought 2 tickets weeks in advance, told her it was a surprise date night to reconnect, and she lit up like I was finally becoming the man she wanted. She wore a black satin dress that showed more skin than it used to, her hair curled in that way she did when she was trying to impress someone specific. She didn't know the someone wasn't going to be me. The venue was in a converted warehouse, dimly lit with exposed brick walls and servers floating around with glasses of overpriced wine. I watched her float through the room like a butterfly, laughing too loudly, eyes darting to the door every time it opened. She was expecting him. I timed it perfectly. At 8:12 p.m., he walked in. Tall, smug, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt like he was some tortured genius. She froze when she saw him. Just a twitch. Barely there. But I saw it. Her smile faltered, eyes widened a fraction, and then composure. She turned to me and asked if I could grab her another wine. I said sure. But instead, I walked to the small tech booth by the far wall, gave the AV guy a USB, and handed him a 50. At 8:17 exactly, "This place," I said. He nodded without question. 5 minutes later, while the gallery owner was mid-toast, the slideshow of featured inspirations on the back wall flickered. First it showed one of the artist's paintings. Then another. Then a photo I had taken from my security feed, my wife kissing her lover in our garage. It lingered, zoomed in slowly. Then another photo, her in a robe, laughing in our kitchen, with him behind her, shirtless, holding a coffee mug that used to be mine. People gasped. A few phones came out. The room rippled with confusion, discomfort, then realization. She turned and saw the screen just as her lover did. Their faces paled in sync. Her wine glass hit the floor, shattering like the last illusion she'd ever sell me. She spun toward me, voice barely holding. "What is this? What did you do?" I stayed calm, my hands in my pockets, not moving an inch. "I thought art was about truth," I said. Her lover mumbled something and fled toward the exit, bumping into a waiter on the way. She grabbed my arm, digging her nails in. "It's not what you think." I looked at her, dead in the eyes. Then explained the timestamps, the hotel bookings, the video feeds. Her breath caught. She switched gears. "Okay, it happened. But it was just once. A mistake." I tilted my head, almost impressed. "So which time was the mistake? Him in our house or you in his?" Her lips curled. "You were never there for me. Always working, always distracted." I felt invisible. I nodded slowly. "So your solution was to make me disappear?" She laughed bitterly then, arms crossed, trying to gather whatever mask she had left. "You're being dramatic. You set this up to humiliate me? In public?" I leaned in slightly, voice lower now. "I gave you every chance to come clean. You chose theater. So I gave you a stage." Her eyes darted around, realizing people were still watching, pretending to look at paintings but really absorbing every word. She leaned closer, whispering sharp and venomous. You think this makes you a man? Broadcasting our private life? I didn't flinch. No. What made me a man was staying silent long enough to watch you bury yourself. And that finally hit. Her face changed. The mocking bravado evaporated, replaced by something fragile, something panicked. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her eyes welled, and for the first time in months, I saw something real in them. Fear. Not of me, but of what came next. Can we talk? Somewhere else? She whispered, suddenly very small. I shook my head slowly. No. You talk here. You lie here. You rot here. I stepped back, letting the air expand between us. She looked around and realized she was alone now, completely alone. Her lover had vanished. The crowd parted like they wanted nothing to do with her. She was radioactive, exposed. And I just stood there, silent, watching. Not out of cruelty, out of precision, out of the cold satisfaction that she wasn't just caught, she was finally irrelevant. The tension in the room didn't break. It hung, sharp and hot, as she stood there trembling, still wearing the dress she picked out to impress another man, now soaking in her own downfall. I didn't leave yet. I wanted her to sit with it. Feel every second. Let it marinate. Let the perfect life she thought she had, the facade she crafted so delicately, burn slow and bright with no escape. The silence after the gallery wasn't quiet. It was loud, deafening, the kind of stillness that eats the edges of reality. She followed me outside, heels clicking too fast behind me like she couldn't let the leash go, still convinced she had some kind of hold. You can't just walk away from this, she shouted, voice cracking, eyes wild with the realization that the story she'd written wasn't going to end her way. I didn't answer. I didn't even look at her. I just kept walking, steady, composed, while her chaos trailed behind like smoke from a burning building. Say something, she screamed. I stopped, turned slowly. You already said everything that mattered. I just gave you a mirror. That broke something. She staggered a step back, then surged forward, rage blooming on her face like rot. You smothered me, she snapped, jabbing a finger in my chest. You were always there, hovering, controlling every little thing. I couldn't breathe. I blinked. You mean I cared? You mistook attention for oppression. She scoffed, shaking her head violently, mascara smudging into tiny bruises beneath her eyes. You were boring. Predictable. You didn't excite me anymore. Everything was just dead. I looked at her, really looked, and said, and yet you stayed. Ate my food. Slept in my bed. Played wife while planning an escape hatch between his sheets. That's not boredom. That's cowardice. Her jaw clenched. Her whole body tensed, like she was preparing to swing a blade and realized she brought a spoon. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man, she hissed. That made me smile, not out of amusement, but recognition. The final card. The insult. The emasculation attempt. Textbook. A real man. I said softly. A real man doesn't stay after the mask slips. A real man lets the fire burn what's already ash. Her face twisted, confusion mixing with rage. She wasn't prepared for this version of me. She thought I'd scream, cry, beg. Instead, I was giving her nothing. And the nothing was worse than fury. You're just trying to look strong, she spat. But you're broken. I know you. I know you. You can't just stop loving me like a switch. I tilted my head. I didn't stop loving you. You killed it. Slowly. Every lie was a bullet. Her breath caught again. She was unraveling, and for the first time, she knew it. So what? That's it. You just move on? Like I never mattered? Her voice shook, desperate now, cracking around the edges. I didn't move. You mattered. Once. Before you started auditioning for someone else's attention like your soul was for rent. She flinched. Actually flinched. Her hands curled into fists. You think this makes you better than me? She whispered. No, I said. It just means I left with my dignity. You left with stains. She tried again. The tears. The shaky breath. I was lost, okay? I didn't know who I was anymore. Everything felt wrong, and you weren't helping. I nodded slowly. Because I wasn't supposed to fix you. I was supposed to stand beside someone whole. You showed up broken and blamed me for the cracks. Her shoulders dropped. The venom was gone. Now just shaking, empty eyes and trembling lips. Please, we can talk. We can figure it out. I'll go to therapy. We can rebuild. I walked past her without a word. She grabbed my arm, gripping tight. Don't walk away from me. I stared down at her hand. You already did. Months ago. I shook her off like a memory and kept walking. She called after me, voice ragged and raw. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. She could scream, cry, beg, none of it would reach me. I had become the thing she feared most. Not cruel, not abusive, not vengeful. Just done. And there is no power more terrifying to the manipulator than a man who simply no longer cares. Revenge, when done right, doesn't look like vengeance. It looks like justice wearing a tailored suit. I didn't rush. That's what she would have done. Scream, cry, swing wildly. But I moved slowly, surgically, like a man untying knots before setting the rope on fire. I started with the finances. Quietly, without ceremony. Our joint accounts became single accounts, mine. The passwords changed overnight. I transferred half the funds to a new bank she didn't even know I'd opened. The rest went into a high-yield savings under my name alone. Credit cards? Frozen. Then reissued. Hers canceled. She wouldn't notice until she tried to buy something that morning, a fresh bouquet, or maybe a hotel brunch, and the payment would decline. The car she was using, technically registered in my name? Towed. I filed a misuse of vehicle report with my insurer and had it removed from the driveway while she was at a meditation hike. I watched her panic through the Ring camera as she searched the street like someone had stolen her sense of entitlement. The apartment lease was next. My name was the only one on it, her idea, years ago, when she said she didn't want the responsibility. Now that gift came full circle. I spoke with the landlord, gave my 30 days, and simultaneously signed a lease on a condo across town, sleek, quiet, gated, and well out of her reach. I even had movers come pack my things while she was out, labeling every box carefully, leaving nothing of mine behind except a single envelope on the kitchen table. Inside it, copies of bank statements, hotel receipts, screenshots, and one simple line. You made your choices. Now live with them. I filed the divorce papers without telling her. Served by mail. Certified, tracked, undeniable. The grounds? Adultery, well documented. My lawyer, a longtime friend who owed me a favor, ensured everything was airtight. I waived spousal support. She would get nothing from me. No alimony, no assistance. Just the echo of her own bad decisions. She'd have to fight to keep the furniture. Let her sleep in the bed she so easily betrayed. Meanwhile, I prepared the social front. I didn't rage post. Didn't play the victim. I simply messaged a curated list of family, friends, mutual contacts. The message was short, emotionless. Thought you should hear it from me. She's been having an affair for several months. I've filed for divorce. If she tries to spin a story, I'm happy to share the proof. Attached was one blurred photo, just enough to imply finality without showing everything. I didn't want pity. I wanted silence on my end and explosions on hers. Her parents were next. A printed copy of the hotel logs and a note. Ask her what room 412 means. Her mother texted me later that night. We're so sorry. We had no idea. Her father didn't reply. I didn't need him to. I could already imagine the phone call. The screaming. The tears. The collapse of the golden daughter persona she'd spent years polishing. But the final move, my favorite, was her job. She worked in HR, claimed she helped build inclusive spaces and team trust. So I sent an anonymous package to her director. Inside, a timeline, several photos of her using company time to visit hotels, a copy of a Slack message she accidentally left on our shared iPad, one where she described her boss as a repressed twerp and joked about using her PTO for private orgasms. I knew they couldn't fire her outright, not right away, but they could investigate, pressure her, cut hours, ice her out, let her unravel in a place she thought she ruled. While she spiraled, I rose. New home, new gym, a new, quieter life filled with peace she could never comprehend. I even reconnected with someone from years ago, a friend of a friend, brilliant, gentle, effortlessly confident. The kind of woman who didn't need to post about self-love to feel valuable. I didn't flaunt her. Not yet. But I let the ripples move naturally. A tagged photo. A mutual friend's story. Her hands in mine, somewhere scenic. Just enough to let my ex see what real replacement looked like. No announcement. Just presence. She still hadn't called. She didn't dare. She texted once. We need to talk. This is going too far. I didn't respond. Because it wasn't going too far. It was going exactly where she steered it. Off a cliff she mistook for freedom. Every step I took, every wire I pulled, was just gravity doing its job. She hadn't fallen. She'd jumped. I just made sure she couldn't climb back up. It happened at her cousin's engagement party, of all places, an upscale rooftop gathering filled with string lights, catered hors d'oeuvres, and relatives trying too hard to pretend their lives weren't rotting under the surface. She begged me to go, said it was important to show we're still united. The desperation in her voice was almost convincing, like she still believed in the idea that we could hide in plain sight if she smiled wide enough. So I agreed. Wore the same tailored suit she used to say made me look dangerously calm. She wore red. She always wore red when she wanted to be noticed. And that night, she needed attention more than air. The first 20 minutes were polite nods and fake laughter, the kind you serve when you know a storm is building but you still think the walls will hold. Her parents were there. So were her aunts. And so was Megan, her best friend, the one she used to whisper to about all her secrets, who now wouldn't meet her eye. When I arrived, Megan hugged me tight and whispered, "She's not ready for what's coming." I smiled. She should have been. At exactly 7:45, the slideshow started. Pictures of the happy couple projected onto a large screen beside the bar. But someone had spliced a few extra slides into the mix. One moment it was champagne toasts, the next it was my wife, lips locked with a man who wasn't me. Then another photo, her legs wrapped around him in the driver's seat of my car, timestamped during one of her so-called therapy sessions. Then a screenshot, her messages, mocking me, calling me a golden retriever in human form. The room froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Her mother gasped. Her father's face turned to granite. She spun toward me, eyes wide, mouth already forming a defense that wouldn't matter. "What did you do?" she hissed. But her voice trembled. She looked around like a drowning woman searching for land. But everyone had already taken a step back. Megan crossed her arms. Her aunt set down her wine and walked away. Her father stood still, jaw clenched, then muttered one word, "Disgusting." She turned red, then pale, then red again. "This isn't what it looks like," she cried out, too loud, trying to patch together some false dignity from the wreckage. "Those pictures are out of context." She laughed, sharp and cracked, like glass under stress. "Come on, guys. You're really going to judge me for one mistake." But her voice cracked on the last word. Her lover, the one in the photos, wasn't there. I made sure he wouldn't be. A message had been sent to his inbox earlier that day, screenshots included. He hadn't replied, but his social media went dark within hours. She looked for him in the crowd. He wasn't coming. No one was. She reached for me, eyes wild. "Please, tell them. Tell them you edited this. That it's not real." I said nothing, just stared at her. Calm, centered, still. She looked like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Her posture collapsed in on itself. The silence around her was louder than any scream. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" Another person muttered, "She brought him here after that." And her smile, the one she always used to get out of parking tickets and family drama, began to twitch. She laughed again. "You're all just eating this up, huh? Can't wait to see a woman fail." But even she didn't believe it anymore. Her legs buckled slightly. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. I didn't move. I didn't offer a hand. She was circling the drain, and she knew I was the one holding the chain. "You think this makes you strong?" she whispered as the room slowly returned to motion, guests walking past her like she was furniture. "Standing there like a ghost? You think you've won?" I tilted my head, just enough to let her know. This wasn't about winning. This was about making sure she never forgot what losing felt like. Her mother walked past her without a word. Her father followed. Megan gave her one last look, half sorrow, half vindication, and then turned to me with a nod. Her whole family had seen it. Her friends had seen it. And worst of all, she'd seen herself, unmasked, exposed, irrelevant. She stood alone, shaking, lips moving but no sound coming out, trapped in the final image of the life she thought she could control. And I stayed, not to gloat, not to comfort, just to watch. Because nothing breaks a manipulator faster than realizing their target no longer fears them. It was supposed to be damage control. Her family invited us to brunch at their house, pretending they could patch up the mess with eggs, orange juice, and the illusion of civility. But the room was packed tighter than usual, and the air carried that sickly sweetness of forced small talk and unspoken truths. She walked in like a woman trying to outrun a guillotine, dressed perfectly, face painted into something almost human, but the tremble in her step gave her away. Her father barely looked at her. Her mother offered a stiff nod. I stayed seated, sipping coffee, watching her with the kind of gaze that doesn't blink because it doesn't need to. She tried to smile, to pretend. "Can we talk?" "Just us," she said, voice brittle. I shook my head. "No more hiding in corners. You wanted freedom. Welcome to the open." That was when it cracked. "You made me look like a monster," she snapped, stepping closer, heat in her voice, desperation in her eyes. "I lost my job, my friends, my reputation, all because you wanted revenge." I stood slowly, set the mug down with surgical calm. "No," I said, loud enough for the room to still. "You lost everything because you treated people like toys. You built a house of lies and cried when it burned down." Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her sister whispered something under her breath. She laughed, mocking, too sharp. "Oh, please, don't act like you were some perfect saint. You were boring. Predictable. I needed passion." I stepped toward her now, calm but rising. "You needed attention. You traded loyalty for lust and expected me to applaud the transformation. I loved you when you were nothing. I stayed when you were lost. I supported your dreams, your breakdowns, your spiritual garbage. And in return, you turned our home into a performance stage for your affair." Her voice cracked now, volume rising. "You never saw me. You just saw the version of me you wanted." I pointed a finger, not at her, but at the room. "Ask them. Ask your parents. Ask your friends. Did I not give her everything? Did I not build a life around her happiness?" Her father nodded solemnly. Megan stood in the corner, filming. "You cheated," I continued, my voice steel now, and then tried to convince everyone it was self-love. "You mocked me in messages, laughed about how easy I was to manipulate, told another man how pathetic I was while I folded your laundry and defended you to people who said you were drifting. You didn't fall out of love. You fell into ego and thought no one would notice." She shrieked now, tears forming. "You're twisting everything." "Then explain the hotel receipts," I snapped. "The messages. The private stories. The lies to your own parents. Explain the man you brought into our house while I was paying the bills and trusting your silence." She was shaking. I was hurting. She shouted, voice splitting. I didn't know what else to do. "So you dismantled me?" I said, bit by bit, "until you could pretend I was the villain?" Her voice turned venomous. "You were weak. Emotionally flat. I needed something real." I stepped forward one last time, inches from her face. "And you got fake, cheap hotel thrills, compliments from a man who disappeared the second you got exposed. You burned a life for a fling, and now you stand in ashes pretending you're the victim." The room was silent now except for her ragged breath and the sound of someone filming behind me. Her mother sat down, shaking her head. Her father muttered, "She did this to herself." And then, from the back, a voice. "She told me you hit her." We turned. Her coworker, Dan, I think, stood near the door, face pale. "She said you were abusive, controlling." I looked at him, then at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Do I look like the one who hid things?" I asked. Dan looked around, saw the evidence in every gaze. He left without a word. Her lies folded in on themselves, and she collapsed into a chair, sobbing now, mascara bleeding down her cheeks like war paint smudged by defeat. "You happy now?" she whispered, staring at the floor. "You win." I leaned in, whispering just loud enough. This was never a game. But if it was, you lost the moment you thought I'd never find out. And with that, I turned and walked out the front door, leaving her crumpled in front of a room full of ghosts she created, her empire of deceit now nothing but echoes and judgment. She thought it would blow over, that people would forget, move on, lose interest. But shame clings like smoke, and hers stained everything she touched. Within a week, her job was gone, officially for policy violations, unofficially because the HR department can't be led by someone who gets exposed at a public event for cheating with a coworker during work hours. Her work email was disabled the next morning, and by the time she checked her phone, her calendar had been cleared. Her LinkedIn profile quietly vanished days later. Her self-love Instagram account, once full of quotes and curated moments, bled followers by the hundreds until she locked it down completely. Her best friend Megan? Blocked her. Cold. Her other friends? Ghosted. Not one call. Not one visit. People who used to flood her comments with hearts now passed her in public without a word, some even crossing the street like her guilt might rub off. She tried to spin it at first, told people I was emotionally distant, that she was finding herself. But the screenshots, the messages, the photos, those didn't leave room for narrative control. And worse, they were real. Her parents cut her off completely. Her mother refused to answer texts. Her father changed the locks and left a bag of her childhood things on the porch with a note that simply said, "You did this." Her sister told me privately that they had family dinners again, peaceful ones, where no one had to pretend everything was fine. Even the affair partner, the man she threw away a marriage for, evaporated into nothing. Unfollowed her. Blocked her. Never returned a single message. Turns out, he liked the fantasy, an affair with no consequences. The second she became a liability, he disappeared like smoke and wind. She moved 2 cities over, took a job at a strip mall insurance agency where no one knew her name or cared about her past. She rented a 1-bedroom unit above a laundromat. No view. No art. Just the hum of machines and the stench of bleach. Months passed. I heard nothing. Until one evening, I came home from work and found her sitting outside my place. Hair pulled back. Hoodie 2 sizes too big. Makeup streaked like she gave up halfway through pretending to be okay. She stood when I approached, eyes red, clutching her phone like it might protect her. "I needed to see you," she said, voice cracking. "Just for a second." I said nothing. Walked past her. Unlocked the door. She followed, stood in the doorway. "I've changed. I've been going to therapy. I know what I did. I know I destroyed everything, and I know I don't deserve anything from you, but please, just listen." I turned around slowly, leaned against the frame. "Go ahead." She choked on air, wiped her face. "I still love you. I never stopped. I think about us every day. What we had. What I lost." I nodded. "You didn't lose it. You threw it away. And now you want it back because no one else wants you either." She blinked. "That's not fair." I tilted my head. "Fair was when I loved you through every meltdown, every lie, every phase where you forgot who you were. This is just reality." She stepped closer. "Please. One chance. I'll do anything. I'll start over. I just want to matter to you again." I looked her in the eye and said it slowly, like I was cutting through a tumor. "Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore." She broke right there. Collapsed onto the steps, sobbing like she could scream the guilt out of her lungs. I closed the door without another word. Locked it. Sat down inside, alone, at peace. She stayed there for 20 minutes. Then left. She hasn't come back since. And that's where the story ends. She chose the fire. I walked through it. Now I stand on the other side, clean, calm, and free. Thanks for listening to my story. I know it wasn't pretty, but it was real. Let me know where you're from, and tell me, did you enjoy the ride?